All right, welcome everybody back to All Things God and Country podcast. I'm Justin Clearwater,
And I'm Jacob Kitson.
and we are your hosts.
It's been quite a minute just because of technical issues.
It's an
Yeah.
understatement.
We recorded a
Technical
podcast.
issues and offended YouTube
Yeah.
gods.
We recorded
Little
a,
G.
yeah, of this world. We recorded a podcast over Hanukkah. It was pretty deep. It was over, it was
But
about,
unless you can read lips,
yeah.
it's not that great.
I mean, we may upload it at some point just for you to, maybe. I bet we could try and run it through like AI and give it some audio.
Probably be some bizarre, like, it's the holy cheeseburger or something.
Right. I felt like that was a Veggie Tale prompt.
That's what kind of reminded me of.
It did. My cheeseburger.
Yeah, it was
And
like an hour of no audio.
yeah, but it was over just a quick synopsis. I'm sure we'll touch on some of it today or whatever it is. We talked about how, you know, Christmas is a pagan holiday. There's a lot of Christians and work with us on the audio. We're still trying to get kind of the tones and everything right. Uh, you know, there are Christians who vehemently defend Christmas out there, and we just did a breakdown of, God gave us feasts. He told us the days by which to keep and to honor him by, and the only two festivals in the scriptures that were celebrated that weren't ordained by God were Purim and Hanukkah, but they were commemorations towards God. So we just touched on that quite a bit and just talked about some of the world events, which we're going to do again tonight.
Because changed a lot of things. Has changed since the last one.
Or the one you can't read.
Yeah,
Um,
even from the one before that, we've had attacks and
oh yeah.
bombings.
And I've seen quite a lot of things. We were talking about this last night, I think it was you and I. We were talking about how,
Get the mic a little closer.
oh, I think you can hear me pretty good.
We can. It won't pick it up as good.
Oh,
This whole arm leans forward too.
oh, that's what I was trying to do. Do I got to unloosen it?
I don't think so.
I just don't want
There
to
you
break
go.
anything, Justin. That pretty good, you
There
think?
you go.
Okay. I just don't want it like,
Now you're locked in.
yeah,
That's better.
gross. Anyway, the the one thing I want to point out is there's we were talking about last night how there's this like kind of attempt. The main one I want to talk about is like Alex Jones and Sean Ryan.
Oh, the MAGA Civil War
Yeah,
coup,
but it's
whatever you want to call it. It you know where it started?
with the Elon Vivek stuff.
It did
Yeah,
with
the
that H. Yeah, yeah,
H-1B1
yeah.
visas. Where
Which it's like, okay, you don't have to agree with it, but that's been their stand. You know
well,
what I mean? It's
and
not
they're
like it's
nobody who's in a
new
position,
news.
right? They're not in a position of power to
No,
do anything
no, all
either.
their job is to cut fat,
Yeah. And
build cars.
me personally, I believe in very, very limited immigration. I don't believe that it should be unfettered. I don't believe that it should be, the Bible, the same word in the Bible that means peoples also means nations, tribe, or clan. And so, there's a reason that people kind of congregate with certain people. And I don't mean that in like a racial
What
sense.
about uh like a brilliant surgeon in, we'll just say India since it's the topic at hand. But he is brilliant surgeon, decides to move to the United States,
That's fine. But
but
see,
not as long as he's sending.
but I still think he should have to immigrate proper channels.
That's what I'm saying.
So, but I think that we should only accept like 100,000 immigrants every 10 years. Okay. Like that's 10,000 immigrants every year. And it's done that way because the issue we have in today is there's no ethos. The title of our podcast is All Things God and Country. Nobody will ever tell me I'm not a patriot for this country, but if you listen to me talk in a day-to-day way, you'd think I couldn't stand to live here. But it's not that. I truly am a patriot in the sense of I love the land by which God has blessed me to live in. And we have no common ethos anymore, right? Like when I was growing up, it was always, and especially being a military kid, it was always, we're a melting pot of America. America's not a melting pot anymore. When you have, and I'm not afraid to talk about Islam or any of that. So I'll never pull punches when defending my service to Yahweh. But when you have a country that was founded on Christian principles, and we were founded as a Christian nation, regardless of what a lot of liberals like to say with church and state, which came much later. Um, you know, one of our founders even said that if this is only for a moral and upright people, and if not so, it'll fail.
I mean, there's always been two different sides fighting over for the soul of this country
Well,
from the get-go.
that's a very, very poignant statement too, because even in a political side of it, like even from a non-spiritual side, you see it with the introduction of like the Federalists and stuff, because there was this divide like right away. I mean, when George Washington was president, he already wrote letters about the infiltration of the government, and I have many of these things.
Well, I mean, you can even take it back to you. I'm sure you do. The Roanoke colony. Do you know that one?
Absolutely.
I was gonna be sad if you didn't,
No, I know what
but
Roanoke is.
that's a fascinating story
Yes, it is.
because they vanished. There's
Yeah.
no bones, no clothes. I mean, nothing. No, nothing. Do you know
So,
what the Roanoke tribe
yeah.
said happened? That they brought a lizard demon with
Hmm.
them on the boat, and it vaporized them, I guess.
Yeah, consumed them. So,
Yeah.
if you look,
So,
yeah,
and the only word written on a post was the word Croatoan.
yeah, which kind of makes you wonder if that's the name of it, if that was telling on
Well, I
itself.
know they were called the Croatoan tribe, or no, they were the Roanoke
They're the
tribe.
Roanoks, yeah.
Yeah, it is weird. That's the only thing left behind is a word.
And there's a lot of stuff like that. Look at, spiritually speaking, again, great podcast. Go follow, like, share, subscribe at not only this podcast, but Now You See TV, and for this kind of topical information that I'm talking about. And uh, look at the national parks and things like from the very get-go, we've had weird stuff. And the God that is over this country, that little G God that is over this country and was over this country, we can trace that back all the way to Babel if we want to like Gary Wayne it and get, a tome out. But you can see all of that back. And so like the name of the Americas is named after a Mesoamerican, so early civilization in America's deity, and it was
Sure.
a feathered serpent, right? And so it reminds me of the verse from Isaiah, that describes the deity like as a fiery cockatrice, right? I think that's like Isaiah. I was just listening to this yesterday. Isaiah 14, somewhere in there. I have a hey, um,
Yeah, there's a couple.
yeah. Well, no. One
Oh, look at
Hanukkah
that.
gift. Look at this.
Yeah, to myself.
Yeah. Yeah. From Justin to me.
Yeah, to me.
Yeah. It was really for him. I know that.
I was just telling my wife the other day, I was like, since he's got that phone, I don't think I woke up without a message from him on my phone.
Well, I'm up way earlier than you. I got up this morning at like
Well, I have I
four
when I
o'clock.
get up at 9, and then I don't you have a 1 hour timer.
Who, me?
Yeah, from when I wake up, I'll message back within an hour. That's where I set
I've
you
kind of
up,
figured that out.
right? But now I have other friends, and I won't say his name, but another friend that I really like that drives me crazy.
Yes.
We talked about him
Yes, we
recently,
did.
and when he texts me, that's like afternoon. It doesn't matter what time it is. After I'll get to you in the afternoon. I need to like wake up. I need to be like all Christianized because I'm not feeling very saved at the moment.
I got to get my Holy
I
Ghost.
haven't had any caffeine. My stomach doesn't feel good.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
just there's just those people you're like, all right, later. I'll get back to you later.
So the verse, I knew it was a nine, but I was wrong by a lot. It's Isaiah 59. And it talks about the cockatrice.
Horseshoe and hand grenades.
Yeah, I knew it was Isaiah. It talks about the spirit of the cockatrice, And in verse 5, it starts out and says, they hatch cockatrice eggs and weave the spider's web. He that eateth of their eggs dieth, and that which is crushed breaketh out into a viper. So that's Old English, King Jamesy fancy talk for this thing turns in from a cockatrice into a serpent. And, the word demon's never used in the Old Testament, right? Demons are talked about in the Old Testament, but we never word them as such. And so one of the things that we see the close.
Well, then there probably weren't any pre-flood, but that's a whole other can
Yeah,
of
no, no, no.
worms.
Demons literally are the disemboweled spirits of the Nephilim,
And there it
right?
is.
Yeah, and so they are forced to wander this earth because they no longer. And you
Well,
see,
they can't go anywhere.
we see Christ give context when he
Yeah.
says, they're forced to wander the earth, looking, seeking for water-filled places in which to inhabitate. Which brings me to the verse in Job that is that the inhabitants of the water. So and now we're going to get into the UAPs. We're just going to get all in there. So let's go backwards real quick. With the early Americans, the spirit in this country, it's been something that if you go back and you look at the word that we used to name this country and that deity, that feathered serpent that I'm talking about, like we literally named our country after a false god.
Well, you could also put on our money not in God we trust, but in rum and tobacco
Well, it's more
we trust.
aptly, yeah.
Jamestown and,
It's more aptly, like when you look at an American dollar, you see so much imagery, symbology of who they serve, right?
well, even in the United States Capitol, if you look above them, it's
Yeah, the road.
Zeus
Well, no,
and
it's George Washington.
it's Zeus, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's called the apotheos of
Yeah, it's
Washington.
like that's kind of weird.
Well, and it's the edification. So like,
I don't know why this crossed over, but I'm going to bring it up real quick. Speaking of people that annoy me, Dan Crenshaw, that guy has been on a tear lately of just ticking people off.
I can't
Oh my
stand.
goodness. Do you see what he said about John Rich?
Oh
The
no.
the rev guy that wrote Revelation, the
Yeah,
country
no,
singer.
yeah.
Yeah, he said something about Crenshaw, and Crenshaw was like, "You one hit wonder," and da, 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 on X,
Yeah,
and
but
then John Rich shared it, and he was like, "I think he needs a timeout." And he's like, it's not just him; it's been a couple other people he's gone off of on X too, and it's weird.
I watched
I
him.
mean, I think he's a tool.
Well, I think he has a coke habit.
I was really look, I was really rooting for the man at
Were
the
you?
start. Well, just because he's got a cool eye patch and his fake eye is Captain America ball. I mean, he has the potential to be a cool dude,
My
but
brother in Christ.
I think he's more the real Nick Fury
My brother, yeah. My brother in Christ. Yeah, the comic
because
book white guy one.
either
Yeah,
one, it doesn't
yeah.
matter. Nick Fury is a shady individual
Dude, no, but the comic Nick Fury
in
was sketchy.
Avengers in the comic. Yeah, he's gonna do what he thinks needs to be done, whether it is not good.
Morally
Yeah,
permissible.
yeah, yeah. Morals are kind of gray area with that guy.
The issue with Dan Crenshaw is Dan Crenshaw.
John McCain 2.0.
Yes, he's a neocon, and but that's reflective.
Should have known bad guys always have an eye patch.
Agreed. Them and pirates, but that's reflective, Justin. If you look
I'm
at,
wearing a
but it's reflective if you look at.
kind of esoterical going on right there, guys.
It's reflective of
What's he really saying?
the culture that this country's founded on, right? Like, let me get a little nerdy real quick. If you look I'm always nerdy. If you look the America, we give a lot of homage to Rome, right? Like we give a lot of like Justin mentioned, the apotheos of Washington in the Capitol Rotunda. We have the Capitol building directly above that, crowned with a false deity that is a pagan deity. The
Well, you
stat,
got the
the Washington,
Washington Monument,
right? But I was getting
which
there.
is just a phalanx symbol.
It's directly
In a,
across from from the dome, and what is that? It's a womb.
and speaking of the Washington Monument, the other night when all sorts of crazy stuff
The lightning
happened,
strike.
lightning struck the Washington Monument,
Yeah.
the Empire State Building,
There's two more places.
one more,
Two.
two.
Yeah.
Was it the White House?
Yes.
The White House,
And the
Washington Monument,
Empire
Empire State
State
Building,
Building. There's one more.
some kind of trade center.
Yes. In New York.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was all in New York.
Yeah. well, no, the Washington Monument's in D.C.,
Oh
in
yeah, I guess
Maryland.
that's true. And the Capitol.
Yeah,
Duh.
but if you
Yeah, all at the same time
Yeah,
too.
it was interesting. But if you look
Very weird.
that on January 20th, the Masons, because the Grand Hall of the Masonic Lodge is in Washington, D.C. for both the York and the Scottish Rite. If you look, the Masons will be performing a ceremony called the Raising of Osiris that will take place on Inauguration Day.
You're wearing a Templar shirt.
Deus
You're
Vult,
gonna
Deus
make.
Vult,
There's gonna be some conspiracy theorists gonna watch this and gonna freak out because I was talking about eye patches, and you're talking.
Deus Vult.
They're gonna be like,
I mean,
"Are they working with Alex Jones?"
if he'd
I
let me,
wish.
if he'd let me, you know,
Dude's ripped now,
yeah, he's gotten lean, bruh.
and now they're like, "It's just a dude impersonating wearing a mask."
Yeah, I've seen
Are
that.
you kidding?
If you look though,
This is not Mission Impossible.
I mean, I think that stuff's real and it's been real for a very long
It's
time.
gotten much better,
Well, I mean, it's very real. The
but
CIA had it in the 80s very
it's so
easily.
funny how they've turned on Alex now.
Mm. It's just his role that he plays in the body of Christ.
Well, he defended Musk too, and that
Pissed a lot of
irritated a lot of
people off.
people. Oh yeah.
Sorry. Justin had the last one. I got that one.
I would argue that's not a swear word, but
Well, no, the King James says he pisseth against the goats.
it also says ass.
It does. And damn. Those were the only words I was allowed to
Yeah,
say.
we've said them all.
That's right, because
And hell.
well, yeah. My granny, my granny said the only if I kept saying hell, I was going to go to hell, and that terrified me. But that was very Baptist. Anyway, this country is founded on that principle of war. It's a spiritual thing, right? Like the Statue of Liberty is Lucifer, if you look at it, right? It has chains upon it. There's a statue you can go look at in Rome, and it's called Lucifer. In that same statue, it's the same face. Lucifer in that statue has a chain on his ankle. Lucifer was his name in Hebrew is Halael, meaning the one who bears light or the light bearer. And so when Jesus said, "I watched Satan fall like lightning," there's several things going on there. The God of this country, and this is why it was so interesting the way that it worked in the colonization of America, especially in the Central America and in the Eastern North American tribes. If you look, they had a culture that was very close to the post-flood culture that existed as far as technologically speaking, because we see in Genesis chapter 6, we see the beginnings of the irritation of God with the inhabitants of the earth. And then you go on in Genesis 10, we have Babel and the dispersion of the nations. There are three primary gods in Mesoamerica that are all worshipped, but the main one is the feathered serpent, like I was mentioning. And so if you look, the pyramids, the culture, the deification that exists in America that was here is very similar to some of the other deities that were very prominent in the ancient world of like antiquity in Egypt and Rome and Greece. Very similar characteristics, qualities, things like that. And so by the time that the Catholic Church, through the Empire of Spain, who was the first people who really came here and started doing anything, by the time they got here, because the Catholic Church at that point was already an instrument of the enemy in a lot of ways, the Catholic Church got here. Look at, say, Cortez's men with his expeditions that took place in South America and such, the eradication of like artifacts and things like that to show whom they serve, right, was at such a great level. So much things were sent back to Spain, and Charles, who was the king at the time, was had a huge role. He was also Holy Roman Emperor. They were all buddy buddy. He was a pope, yada yada. A lot of stuff was taken from here to go over there. And so you ever notice the Vatican from aerial looks like a keyhole?
Hmm.
You ever notice that?
Hmm.
If you look though, this country is founded on the spirit of blood and war. That's what I
Sure.
was getting at. And people like, circle back here, Eye Patch McCain 2.0 there, people like him serve the original God of this country. One of the things, did you ever watch the Clash of the Titans films?
Sure.
Did
Yeah.
you watch I think it's the second one where yeah, it's the second one where they release Cronus,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think so.
Okay, so what I like, I I I don't suggest people watch these movies, but the thing that God has given me a great blessing and understanding is the oh I see what they're saying out loud there, right? Like, I see how that part, so shall it be in the days of Noah, it shall be in the end. We don't think about it like that way, but all of our lives, for the most part, except for the 90s, maybe, 2000 onward has been nothing but superheroes and like ancient deities. When you look at the films at
Look,
large,
look at Stargate's a good example.
yeah, even stuff like that.
There was a lot of like real close to the truth stuff in there.
Well, and the Stargate thing, I understand. Like, I get the truth there because
Well, not even with that, but like the aliens that were here before that built the pyramids,
right.
and it's just
Uh,
not far off.
no, and it's not. And there's a reason all of those cultures present themselves as like
Even how the aliens interact in that show is very true to like how
the false
demons or
demons.
fallen would
Yeah.
interact. They don't really like each other, but they kind of get along if they have to. And
So look at that.
yeah, hmm.
That's Rome, right? So my point with this is America, like there used to be,
Popes open the final
I
door.
saw that. If you look, America used to have a lot of like Native North America had a lot of like Indian pyramids too, in like
Hmm.
Kentucky, Ohio, Missouri. And a lot of those have been eradicated. The Grand Canyon has the hieroglyphs of Egypt in them. Like there's all kinds of stuff they don't want you to think about. But the god of this country always has been Lucifer. And by extension, kind of an Aries vibe. Do you remember in that movie? That's what I was talking about. Excuse me. Where uh, Aries is the most powerful because he's still got people praying to him because he was a war god.
Hmm.
So think about this. You know, you watch a lot of those SEAL dudes. Not a lot of them are Christians, right? That's the one thing we give Sean Ryan props for, right? Is that he's a believer in Christ.
I will admit I'm seeing more special forces guy coming to faith than before.
Well, and the reason so is because the time and
Like
season we're in.
DJ Shipley,
Hmm.
he's got a. Have you ever listened to him?
I know of him,
Oh my goodness.
but it's because the time and season we're in.
Yeah.
Same reason Russell Brand, Tucker Carlson, all those other
Yeah,
dudes did.
it's fascinating when the world's best soldiers are like, yeah,
It's time to
you
choose the
better get
right.
right with the Lord.
Well, and so that's my point though, is if you
They are.
look
They've seen glimpses of hell.
right, I was in the military, and so one of the things I will tell you is, especially in the Army and the Marines, is that they inadvertently pray to the god of war,
Sure.
right? You know, I've ran to some stupid stuff, but like they inadvertently pray to the god of war. This country, with the sacrificing of our children to Baal, we've killed over 80 million children in this country in just the last 55 years. It's very evident. And so we have this huge calling by the Lord. You know, we talked the other day like that there's not been a spiritual revival.
Since the 70s.
But I think you're wrong. And I was going to tell you this in person, and this is why is let's go back. We think of revivals like, especially I do because I'm Baptist growing up, right? Was like a week long event or a month long event, right? And it, you know, and maybe there was a tent involved, maybe there wasn't, you never know. Um, I think that that's kind of a context we have is we think that it's going to be a right here thing. But let's go back 5 years ago when Sean Foyt was touring the country and the world to do, you know, his message of the gospel. And you can say what you want about him. I mean, like, I know he's not a perfect representation of our faith,
He
but none of,
just comes from Bethel.
right. But that's um, just because the
But
kitchen,
it's not a move that swept the nation.
no. What I was getting at is this is I think that, and this is where you're more pessimistic than me, which I find funny, because normally it's you telling me, well, keep on the sunny side. Is if you look, there's been several things that have transpired, I'll say over the last 4 years, okay? 5 years now since COVID. We're leading up to something in a revival sense. If not technically, we'll look back in history and say, oh, that's kind of when it started, right? Like it might not be the catching fire part, right? Like that a lot of charismatics talk about catching the fire and taking it back to your home base, which I think there's truth in that, but I think that they build a doctrine on it in a wrong way. I do see. with the Sean Ryans, with the Russell Brands, the Tucker Carlsons, the Kid Rocks, the coming to the Lord. That kind of is a revival in a way, right? Like that is God coming and touching those who they said was, yeah, that person will never, Kid Rock used to have a banging coke habit, like if God is touching those hearts, the Russell Brands who literally have, what, six other deities
Right.
tattooed on their body, that's kind of a revival, man.
But it's not like you ever studied Azusa Street?
Yes, I know about the
I
Azusa Street
mean,
revival.
we haven't had something monumental, not since that made, I mean, the hippie movement, Lonnie Frisbee was on Times Magazine.
Yeah, I know.
I mean,
Yeah, I know. You showed me the picture, how much it cost.
it's just, it's been a very long drought.
I agree with you.
And I think
I think the
it's the
land is
church's
thirsty.
fault.
Absolutely, it's the church's fault. But if you note, there are so many prophets, people with the spiritual gifting of prophecy, who have taken up the role that a lot of well, all of the prophets, but mainly you see it with like Amos, Hosea, Daniel, even, the prophets before the exile. Daniel doesn't count. But if you look at the prophets who are like, hey, hey guys, hey, there's a lot of people who hold the gift or have the gift of prophecy or hold the office of prophet who have been put in positions to call the church out in ways that 10 years ago we weren't,
Right.
right? Like,
Well, and they're just getting exposed all on their own too.
well, and that's
I mean,
part of it.
there's a purge going on.
In every facet of life, not just within the church.
Well, no, the world mirrors the church.
Correct.
And this kind of started in the church.
And if, that's the verse.
Yeah.
Correction begins in the house of the Lord. When you look, you got to go, oh, hmm. There's a lot
And
of,
most of these, you gotta also think most of these guys getting exposed are guys that were part of those last moves, right? Think
a
about
lot of
that.
them are, yes.
From the hippie movement to well, not Azusa, but a lot of them have built ministries off of that. Brownsville revival. Dr. Michael Brown came out of that, and I'm on the fence still about him, so leave it
Me
alone.
too.
But hoping for the best.
Praying for the best.
Yeah, we'll see. But I
But,
mean, they all came from these.
and you're speaking mainly to like the charismatic
Well,
side of
sure,
life.
because the cessationists aren't doing revival.
No, but we also need to look,
They're not really trying.
but you need to look at both sides of it. We can't, we have to look at both. The cessationists do have inroads where God has worked in them. Um, I find it just as difficult to speak to an overly extensive charismatic as I do somebody who believes in none of the gifts.
Well, sure, because look at the charismatic ones being exposed. They built off of
Taint
that thing, and
everything
then
else.
they morphed it into something that it shouldn't have been.
So we have to give credit where credit is due in this life, as far as things that are in obedience unto the Lord. S- I'm not endorsing anyone. I pick on him a lot, and I will continue to pick on him a lot. But one of the things John MacArthur did do, he never shut down during COVID. When you look at people like him, and I wouldn't say Greg Lowry, however y'all say it,
Lori.
is that's what I thought, is a cessationist, but I would also say he's not a charismatic. He's a very balanced
Hmm.
person. God's used him a lot through this. If you look at,
I guess I wouldn't put him in the camp with them.
but he's not over there with them either.
No, he's made his own.
Agreed. He's in as close to the right camp as you can
He'd
be,
be in like
our camp.
It'd be like him, Levi Lesko. There's a couple of those guys that are a lot like that that all kind of
Well, even
um
somebody more to the right of that, I would say, is like Chuck
Swindoll.
Swindoll. He's more to the right of both of them in that sense of things. But he's a wonderful man. Some of my favorite sermons I've ever listened to, he's preached. And I wouldn't say I don't actually think he is a cessationist. I don't know if he is or not.
Which guy?
Chuck Swindoll.
I don't know.
I think
Wasn't
he's
he wasn't he involved with Chuck Smith too?
back in the day. I mean, the dude's ancient.
Yeah. I think
He's
is he still
super old.
alive?
Yeah, he's like 90 something, I think,
Really?
almost. And he still preaches. But if you look, God is using both
Have you,
sides.
have you ever read the story about John G. Lake?
Not that I'm aware of.
John G. Lake, if I'm getting it right, he was alive during the Black Plague, and while all these people were getting sick and dying,
Yes.
he went in there and he said, "Put it on my hand and watch it under a microscope die." And they did, and they watched it die. And then there was another one. He was praying for people, and they were getting healed and stuff. And he needed to go take care of something, so he had to get on a
90.
well, he had to get on a horse and take off or whatever. So he goes over to this tree stump and he prays a blessing on it, I guess. And he said, just tell them to go touch the stump and they'll get healed. And so that's what happened. There's lines still going through and they're going touching the stump, getting healed, and leaving because he
Powerful.
had to go do something. So he took off.
And I do believe in those things, and it's,
Smith Wigglesworth,
yeah, I
that
know who
dude
Smith
was,
Wigglesworth is.
I think you would get along well with him
Probably. He was
because
pretty
he was kind
intense.
of stubborn and
Intense.
crotchety.
I'm not
Well, but
crotchety.
you'd be that guy like Smith because he told us there was a story about him where some guy came to his house with a newspaper in his hand, and Smith goes, "You leave those lies outside my house."
Okay, I probably would be like that.
He was,
Yeah.
and then like when God told him that woman's going to be your wife, he just went over to her and put his arm around her and already began treating her like she was his wife, and she was like, "What are you, what are you doing?"
Well, and I mean, God does
Or
that
he'd
stuff to me.
punch them and they'd get healed.
So I won't name them, okay, by name for the sake of that's not right. But the person who I told you we hired, who goes to the Living Way, you said you knew her, correct? So God told me yesterday why.
Oh, you mean? Just
Yeah.
kidding. Just kidding.
That was nice.
Thank you.
Um, so God told me, and not in the God told me to do, way that's overused. But on the way home yesterday, I was worshiping the Lord, and I sent you a video of this, and I was thinking about this person because I'm also the chairman of the organization that the organization that I am a part of just hired. And no joke, in the middle of a field in a snowstorm we're having, there was this individual white lamb just in the corner of the fence. And when I looked back in my mirror, it was absolutely not there.
Hmm.
I went about a little further down the road and I was like, all right, Lord, what am I supposed to do? Like, because that church is a church that uses like the Passion Translation, and that
Sure.
is not a translation.
No.
It is not even a thought for thought. It's not
No.
even a paraphrase. It would be
No.
called a sectarian, which means it's been transformed into something of its own to mean something not originally of the source material.
I'd put it in the same category with that I don't know, people are gonna be bad, I don't care. That Jesus calling book.
I don't think so. It's Sarah
It
Young.
it's super witchy.
Jesus.
Super witchy.
I've seen that breakdown with Sarah Young, and I've used Sarah Young's devotional. Like, I get why a lot of people say that, as far as because of how it's from the first person perspective, right?
She says this is what the Lord said.
Right. And I think that,
And it's
so like I said, I've used it before, and I mean, I've seen God use it in my life. That's what I'm going to get at. So I'm not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater on that one.
super witchy, man.
But I wouldn't suggest it to
No.
people. I'm not going to go out and use it, but I'm not going to not, if somebody's not at that point in their understanding, I'm not going to diminish them for it. Does that make sense? I'm going to
Yeah.
inform them.
I'm gonna give him something different.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying. I do.
Why have McDonald's when you can have prime rib?
Correct. And again, not every time do you, and you've taught me this, not every time do you come in with a wrecking ball. Sometimes you got to
No, but if
ease
somebody has
into it.
my opinion, I think it's witchy.
Okay. Yeah. And I understand what you're saying there. And I would say the same thing about the Passion Translation.
Oh yeah.
It's very,
Not a fan.
because he says, and God told me. And so I'm not doing it in that sense. But I was driving home and I was continuing to drive home. And after I saw this lamb, a lot of listened to the or to the audiobook that Gary put out. And all of a sudden, this golden eagle, it's about this tall, sitting on a post over here. And it just locks eyes with me. And it was just right in that moment, God told me, go home and get these 3 books. So, and take them to her because the organization she's a part of is way over here. Now, I'm not going to use John MacArthur to correct Kenneth Copeland. Um, but I will tell you this, if 45 years ago or however long ago those two guys had came together, they'd probably actually be all right. Because they diverged into the realm of their own interest so greatly that they didn't allow iron to sharpen iron. One became all thoughts, one became all spirit, right?
I would probably put the argument that Kenneth Copeland was never on
Okay.
the side of good.
We can use Benny Hinn. Who
I
do we
would,
want to use? Over
mm,
for the side.
still Wolf.
Huh?
Wolf from the get go.
Well, and okay, I could see that. So give me somebody then, like,
That wasn't a wolf from the get go.
sure.
Rob Bell.
Okay. Okay. We'll probably put him over here, right?
He's a wolf now, though.
We'll same with Greg Locke.
Yeah, he's a
Greg
little
Locke.
weird. He
Um,
did get his house shot at, though, so
yeah, but he's somebody who went from over here to over here,
yeah.
and his sin is was a very
Mark
open sin.
Driscoll.
Mark, I'm on the fence about.
He just annoys me.
I'm on the fence
Every
with
time
Mark.
I think, oh, that's a good thing. And then, like, 3 seconds into the video, it's like, oh, he's plugging for his book.
That part
You're
does
like,
annoy me. But if you look, I went home and I got these three books.
drives
So
me crazy.
you can say what you want about C.S. Lewis,
I like C.S. Lewis.
his backstory, as far as how he came to the faith and everything. And some of the works he wrote are some of the greatest works to defend our faith as Christians as far as to the world goes. He was an incredible, prolific thinker when it came to our faith. And I just find it so hilarious that his wife's name was Joy. Uh, and God gave him his joy. And so that's beautiful. So I got
I've
that.
got several of his books.
I have all of his books.
Mere Christianity.
That's the one I
It's a
took
good one.
took to her because you got to think she came into the faith. She's the only person in her family that way.
That one I give out to people a lot, and The Heavenly Man.
Yeah.
So there's just something about Brother Yoon.
Depending on the person, screw tape letters is one I give to a
That's
lot
a
of
good one
people
too.
because
I gave the
somebody like you and me, I give it
uh
to.
Heavenly Man to Carter.
I could see.
I
Yeah.
think he read it. Didn't he talk to you about it when he was here? Weren't you guys talking about Brother
Yes.
Yoon?
Yes,
Yeah.
we were.
He must have already. I'm not
Mm.
surprised, but
Carter's a
I
cool
bet he
kid,
really liked that.
but he has the same. He's more like me than you.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he has the same gifting as us.
He
More like
he does
teaching.
topographical mapping.
Yes, he talked to me about that, and he does them for
Amazing.
books and
Yeah.
for people pay him like
I've got his book on my Kindle.
good. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
nice. People pay him good money. He said,
Oh yeah. That's nice
but
hard to do.
yeah, but if you look, this I God just he told me which three books to give her. One was by a man named Gregory Banson who wrote a book called By His Standard, and he was somebody who was very prolific in apologetics. Right, he died while having heart surgery, if I'm not mistaken. So it was, and he's fairly young. Um, God used him, took him, and that happens for some of us. And then the other book was a book called In Between Heaven and Hell. And I can't remember the author of it right now, but it's John F. Kennedy, C.S. Lewis, and Aldous Huxley. Do you know who that is? He wrote the book Brave New World.
Hmm.
Have you ever heard of that? Okay.
Maybe.
Okay. Anyway, all three of them died on November 22nd, 1963.
Hmm.
JFK was a Catholic. And then we would call C.S. Lewis probably an evangelical Christian um, by today's standard. And then Aldous Huxley was like Elon Musk, a humanist, right? So believed that man could evolve. And essentially, it's they're in the waiting room to talk to God or to get to go see God.
Hmm.
And C.S. Lewis, it's a book of apologetics, and it's only like 90 pages long. And the whole thing's written like a conversation between the three of them. But the way that it does it would help you talk about your faith.
Sure.
Anyway, the one thing I think is beautiful is that we get to see how the Lord works, and I think He is calling people out. Like when we get put in certain positions to walk alongside people, even if it's in the church, like God had me send a letter to the church I grew up in recently, right? Like that was weird, but it was God is calling those people out of Babylon. I see a day, and I believe that the true church doesn't dwell within the pews. The true church, most of the time, people who are in the pews are a part of the church. I'm not saying that, but The
Things
way
are changing.
that's what I'm saying. Oh boy, Frank Viola? Does that
Hmm.
sound right?
Pagan Christianity.
Yeah. He
Yeah.
also wrote a book called, what
Or
did he write?
redefining church.
Reimagining
Yeah,
Church,
I have
right?
that on my
I
Audible.
I have a couple copies of it. He wrote that after
I have
COVID.
a hard copy too.
He wrote that after COVID.
Reimagining?
No, not Reimagining Church. Yeah.
I think he's older than that.
No, Reimagining is the blue and red one, right?
Yep.
Okay, that's not it. This is it's either him or Lusko wrote a book about the church after COVID. I can't remember the name of it right now. You can go look.
Last Supper on the Moon
No. Uh,
by Levi Lesko.
but it's fairly recent publication. It's one of those
I
two.
read his Pagan Christianity
I have it at home, yeah.
and Reimagining Church.
I think I think I have both of them.
They're on
I
the
might have gave
Audible.
you your Reimagine back.
I don't know.
Anyway, one of us hasn't. Uh,
I
the
have another one by him too with George Barna.
we have all of them at the
I can't
clinic.
remember what it's called.
We have all of his books at the clinic. We also have all of Lusko's at the
Pagan
clinic.
Christianity was a good one.
Yeah,
Did you Last Supper on the Moon?
I
Did you
haven't
get
seen
that one,
that.
Levi's?
No, I'm sure the clinic has because all of the ladies like
I think it's
Levi.
on my Audible too.
But if you watch and pay attention, man, you'll see
Why don't
that
we get him into town? That would be cool.
that would be cool.
He does those Skull Church events all over Montana. It'd be fun.
It would be.
Get David Crowder here, maybe. Phil Wickham.
Oh,
They're friends with Phil.
um, I know somebody who knows his mom and no babysat him.
Phil Wickham?
Yeah,
You mean Jeremy Camp?
or Jeremy Camp. I'm sorry. Yeah,
Different.
thank you. I'd rather have Jeremy Camp than Phil.
I'll take either. Levi's friends with Phil.
You're getting skinny jeans no matter what.
Yeah, it's true. You have to go with POD to get away from that.
Yeah, in the
Even
Christian church.
Disciple have skinny jeans.
Demon Hunter doesn't.
Are you sure?
No, Brian doesn't wear. I'm pretty sure Brian doesn't wear. Anyway, that's not important.
It's
The
just POD, man.
if we
Got
look
the
though,
jorts and stuff.
God is you. He's changing the way the church is going to look. You know, the day is coming soon where they lose all their power. Those buildings do because
Yeah.
the church is not
Headed that way as it is.
what I would love nothing more truly is for some kind of I didn't realize I was going to pick up monumentally not catastrophic.
Cataclysmic?
Yeah, as long as, yeah, we'll go cataclysmic. Like I know South Park's not something we should watch, but there's an episode of South Park where they try to turn the internet off and they have to go and try and find the big router. And there's a scene where they just push the button and they turn off the internet for the world. If I could do that, I would because people,
To get this party started.
that's right.
That would do it.
Community is something that is God is requiring the church to do. We often will hear us say that the church has failed. And my great grandfather, who served on the USS Texas, would say things like the Great Depression, and I believe this too, would have never happened if the church had done its job. And he was kind of bitter towards the church. Like my great grandmother was Catholic.
He's
And
right.
he was very right.
We wouldn't have had World War II if the church had done their job.
Absolutely. And,
I mean, there's been some good guys along the way. You got your Billy Grahams and your David Wilkerson, but it doesn't seem to.
especially
It's
after
been
the
a long
second,
time.
especially after the Second War.
Yeah.
The Second War was I truly do believe this, and I'm not a dispensationalist because I think a lot of that crap doesn't matter. And, seminary is where your faith,
Cemetery?
yes, where your faith goes to die. And so that's why we call it a cemetery. But because a man is teaching you how to think instead of being led by the Spirit of the Lord to understand his word, no matter how the Lord leads you, whether it's through movies, whether it's visually, however is going to be unique to you and the Lord, and that's a very special thing. But it's all based upon the Word of God. If we were to look and we were to see and we were to look and look at the people since the Second War that have came out of that, and yeah, Billy was great, but Billy kind of played a part in that, concreting the way to go about it. So did people like Chuck
I
Swindoll.
mean, not his fault. I mean, what's God had for him doesn't mean it should have been for everyone else.
We can say that about Martin Luther, Calvinism. We can say that about any of it.
Well, that's what we always do. God tells somebody to do it this way, and then everybody replicates it, but for some reason it doesn't work because it wasn't for
There,
you.
that's
It
right.
was for him.
And
And
that's
that's where we really have gone wrong in the church, is that we think, well, it worked for that guy, so no, 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 no. Stop, stop,
and
stop.
and that's where I think God's going to lead the church back to. We're going to get ostracized, and I, it's going to be weird. I still don't trust the government. I never will again.
No. Well, another of the problems, especially with MAGA, is that there's a lot of them that are not believers
Majority aren't.
and that seem fine that we can do it. It's like they can do it on their own. They don't
Well,
need God.
and
And that's a problem.
I still am not sold on Donald Trump in a lot of ways because the single greatest cause of atheism is people who confess Christ with their lips but deny him by their lifestyles and their action. This is simply what an unbelieving world finds unbelievable. No copyright infringement, please.
And it's the year of the snake.
Yeah. But
Ironic.
yeah, well, last year was the year of the dragon in the Chinese zodiac. Now, if dragons aren't real, by the way, why is every other critter on their 13 cycle calendar? Why is every other critter on there a real critter if that one ain't? Not only that, isn't the Chinese dragon, if you listen to people who have been given prophetic ministries or giftings for the most part, oftentimes the dragon is what we see if it's a religious thing
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
maybe not even religious, but like it's
Red dragon that
associated.
chases the pearl.
Yeah, I've seen a little
Yeah.
stumpy gold one.
And let's say the minister's the head of the dragon and he's chasing the pearl, and it could be a new coffee shop, a gymnasium, whatever it might be, and all his the church people behind him are the legs, and the pastor's just chasing this pearl, and that's all it ever is. Now it's easy, well, it's not easy, but it's doable to get some of the legs free from under it, but it's really hard to get that head out from
Yes.
under the dragon.
So I responded to him. I told you the other day what happened, right? When Sharon and I were okay. I responded to him by card. And I went and took it back. And what you're talking about reminds me a lot of that. It's like the leg, you can see it's faltering.
The captain goes down with the ship.
Yeah, and
You built the boat. You drove the boat.
yep.
You can go down with the boat.
And you didn't want to see none of the oars help you get out of that circle you're swimming in. And that's a lot of what it is we see
Even
the
God can't sink the Titanic. Hmm. Hmm.
when in reality it was the Rockefellers and JP Morgan and the rest of those dudes because they wanted to create the Federal Reserve and they were in bed with Woodrow Wilson. Anyway, that's a different podcast. The whole idea of it though uh, in our country as a
Well,
whole.
isn't that kind of the as Americans, isn't that we think that even God can't sink it?
Well, yeah, but that's that spirit by which this nation was
Mm,
founded in and upon that there's a reason our country was founded, like literally founded by blood,
sure.
right? Like there's a reason that
There's a
our,
Masonic lodge in every town,
yes, there's a reason that
and it's old as dirt.
blood, well, like take Terry's. It was founded during the Great War.
Right.
Like they're consequential for sure. Like when you welcome to blank on their sign is always going to have the compass because the
Right.
Mason's got to let you know. If you look though, man, we're starting to see God call all that out. And I think that the spirit of this nation is coming to a head. I
Ironically, the internet has been a great tool of that because there's so many people that can just start a podcast.
well, yeah,
And then people watch and like, oh, I didn't know that. I mean, look, the confessionals, Sean Ryan. I mean, you go on and on and
yeah.
on, and you go watch TV. Got to turn on the Fox News or
No,
CNN or any of those other numbnuts.
I can't tell you truthfully the last time I watched until the other day, and I told you, Cher, I thought it was silly, so I got to finish it on my own. But I can't tell you the other day until the other day when the last time was I watched a TV show. I don't watch television. Do exactly what you just said. You know, if I want to see the news, I go
Yeah.
find somebody, Savannah Hernandez,
You
who,
don't got to wait to hope I caught it in time before I have
no,
to wait for the rerun or whatever.
right. I go and watch these people.
Forget
Right.
that.
That's the best part. Oh,
And these plastic personality.
cookie cutter
Yeah.
things. And that's the spirit, the old spirit, right? Like
Yeah.
you see it,
Like the Hunger Games.
it is. And I'll wrap it up with this today. Like the plagues upon our land currently is much like how God dealt with, and it's in our archives. Maybe one day Justin will bring them back out on our channel. But we once did a series together about the plagues and how they apply to this country. And if you look I didn't realize until recently how prophetic that was. But the each one of the plagues dealt specifically with one of the gods of of Egypt.
Yeah.
So there's something that I'm going to compare real quick, and then I'll give the gospel is uh, the gods of Egypt listed in Exodus, right? That where the plagues take forth as far as how they're executed. So one of the things that we see there is it says that the spirit of death is released upon the firstborn. I believe that that's Abdon mentioned later on and elsewhere in the scriptures.
Abaddon?
Yes. Um, how did I say it?
I have no idea.
My accent might have got me. But I believe that that's Abaddon, the spirit mentioned elsewhere in the scriptures. And it would make sense because we go to Revelation and we look and we see that a lot of those things, from what our understanding of like chimeras and things of that nature, kind of similar. You know, God is going to deal with this place
I
in the same way.
I think things are about to get
Weird.
really weird
Yeah.
with these portals that have been opened.
Did you see they built this giant portal that reminded me of a Stargate in Detroit, Michigan?
Oh yeah, 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 that like it's a two-way camera kind of thing.
No, that's in New York and
Oh,
Ireland.
okay.
What I'm talking about is like, it looks like a Stargate.
Huh.
And if you take a magnet and you put it on a circular motion, like at a high enough speed, you can create an electromagnetization that is a mini aurora borealis, a tiny portal. One of the things you're seeing, why did the aurora borealis reach all the way down to the equator this
Texas.
year? That's never happened. As far as we've recorded, like if you look, man, the things that are going on are going to be severely intense this year.
Well, just think about what was released from those portals. Did you see the video of the Pope's face when he opened it?
Oh, and even the bishops behind him, yeah.
Looked like horror.
Yeah,
Like even
like
they were terrified of what they just
yes,
did.
yes. But what happened the couple weeks before that? The rededication. So there's a lot of weird stuff that like it would take me, I could do a 10-hour podcast on just this topic. You look at the opening and the rededication of Notre Dame, the
Yeah.
cathedral at Notre Dame, right? Like,
Now that's funny too. You bring that up because did you have you seen video of the original fire?
yeah,
Now there's a one video. It's hard to
it's
find.
an animated one.
No,
Oh,
this
that's
isn't. This is
no.
real footage,
Okay, go ahead.
and you can see a guy in a white
Yes.
robe with
Yeah.
a red cross
Yeah.
looking on it, looking
Like
looked
a
at like
Templar.
yeah,
Yeah.
looked just like a Templar.
Now watch this. There's a video that came out at the beginning of the year when Notre Dame burnt up, and it was an animated film, and it was probably about 4 minutes long, and I can't find it either.
Hmm.
It's kind of been scrubbed, and it's got Jesus, it's quiet and everything, and it even shows to the T how the spire of Notre Dame fell. So what I think happened is God gave somebody a prophetic revelation and then created this animation, and it was burnt. What I want to note to you is in Saudi Arabia, they built the what do they call it? The Garden of Abraham or something like that, where they built this synagogue, this chapel, and this mosque, right? And they're all three facing inward. Symbology is here, man. And if you look, well, in CERN is a
Yeah,
portal. Shiva, the god of destruction, the multi-headed or the multi-handed entity is literally the dedicated god for that. Shiva is always represented as with the arms with a circle around them. If you look, it's all symbolic, dude. They're trying to bring forth the things of old in a physical manner. The spirits of so the spirits that are upon the earth. the demons that we have, they're the minions of mommy and daddy.
Yeah.
You know, they're the it's like that scene from cartoon Hades, Hercules, when Hades
Yeah.
rides the chariot into the ocean and he pulls the water open and he lets them out, right? Like that's what they're trying to do, man. And they're very, very close.
I was gonna say, are they trying or did they?
I think they did.
I think they did too.
And when we look
And if
at,
those things are loosed, then we're gonna see some weird stuff.
and I want to point out, Israel is the one to watch. I don't believe that there has to be a rebuilding of the temple because Christ clearly said we were the temple. But the book of Ezekiel very clearly says it will be rebuilt, right? I wholeheartedly believe that when you read things like the abomination of desolation that Daniel and Christ both references, Gary brought a different perspective to this I hadn't seen. But if you look, that's going to be some kind of Nephilim
Yeah.
that sits upon the throne. So Satan is kind of a generic term, but the bad guy, the main bad guy, Lucifer, I wholeheartedly believe that it will be his seed, literally, that is the Antichrist. Like somehow, I don't know how, but it will be his seed because God said in Genesis 3:15, I shall put enmity between your seed and the woman's. He seed means seed. And so the serpent seed now is these demons. Is
You could argue too that that seed is descended from Cain. I think
well,
that there's always been like an opposition bloodline,
yes.
like Cain and Esau. You know,
Yes. But Esau I wouldn't count. Esau is a true Adamite. He is
yeah,
somebody who is descended from the correct
he had a
lineage.
choice.
What I believe with Cain is this is my personal belief.
Did you know that it doesn't say he killed him with a rock?
No, it says he slew him in anger.
Most people, scholars say they believe that it was probably like the end of a plowshare
I could believe that.
because
Yeah.
that's what he
Yeah, it
used.
was grain.
So I'll give him that.
Yeah.
Seems logical. Which
Well,
is kind of ironic to use a plowshare too. So there's some symbology in that.
absolutely. And if you look though, whether Cain was the literal seed of the serpent or not, because I do believe the first sin was sexual, because the first thing God says is, "Who told you you were naked?" Right? And they were his children. And Paul, even in the New Testament, puts great emphasis against sexual sin whenever he's speaking about the improprieties of it. Um, when we look at that, the Raphaim, the Nephilim, there's a reason God told them don't intermingle with those people when you go into the promised land, right? Like it's real.
Yeah.
Like, and so don't know how it works, but the Antichrist will declare himself God, right? Like Nimrod, according to the Epic of Gilgamesh, was 2/3. Well, and even in the Bible it says it. It says he became like the mighty men of old
Yeah.
before the flood. So like somehow he was reintroduced, whether it's through possession, mingling, whatever, that took place. And if you look at what we're going in today, the science, so like they have little chimeras that they keep alive already, little monkey pig hybrid things,
Yeah.
right? So we have to ask ourselves things like that. They just don't bear the image of the Almighty Lord Jehovah. Like if clones can be achieved in a real format, they don't have souls. They're just empty vessels, meat
True.
sacks.
Well, did you see the thing about ChatGPT the other day? They tried to update the system
I saw that.
and it tried to save itself into a hidden folder
Hmm.
against its own code. Like, dude, that's the plot of
Every bad
Terminator.
movie ever,
I Robot.
dude.
It's just crazy.
I we have to come to an apex soon. And whether Christ breaks forth from the clouds or he scatters the nations across the land, that's only up to the Almighty. But what I know is that I know we rambled a lot today and didn't necessarily talk about things, but I think we were fairly topical.
Hey, it's gonna get a lot weirder than this.
Yeah. And so,
Pretty sure it's
yeah.
headed that direction.
But if you don't know the Lord this day and you just happen to stumble across this, know this, that the Lord Jesus Christ came He was born of a virgin, fulfilling the law and the prophets and the Psalms, and he dwelt upon the earth for 33 years, and he lived a sinless life. And at the age of about 30, 29, 30, he began his ministry for our salvation. And for 3 years, he ministered amongst the nations to all kinds of people, first revealing himself to poor Gentiles, right? Like the people who otherwise he wouldn't have, or wouldn't have been able to come and make those offerings, right? One of the things I love that Jesus says to the woman at the well is, uh, well, there'll be a day where you don't have to worship at that place, you know? So Jesus came, he died for you. He was convicted of sins and crimes that do not belong to him, but he willingly went from the garden unto the cross, knowing that Judas would betray him. And he hung between two thieves, and there he hung, and he was crucified, and he was beaten and broken so that your body and mine would not have to be. And in the afternoon, he gave up his spirit unto the Father, and his body then was taken and put into a borrowed tomb, where there he laid for 3 days his body. But his spirit he descended unto the depths of the earth, and he took the keys of death from Satan himself. And upon the third day he rose. He from the grave he rose, and he first appeared to Mary. Thank you. He first appeared to Mary Magdalene, and then unto the many his disciples. And for 40 days he performed many signs and wonders. And the the Apostle John says, as if we recorded them all, there's not enough paper upon the earth. And after 40 days he ascended to the right hand of the Father, where he now sits enthroned in glory, waiting to judge the hearts of men, for he has already judged the earth. So, if you do not know who the Lord Jesus Christ is today, know this, that he came and he would have died for just you if you had been the only person here on this earth, because our Father loves you so much. But first, you must repent, turn away from the deeds of the flesh, and accept the covering of the blood of the Lamb, Jesus Christ, upon your life. Choose this day whom you will serve, but as for us, we shall serve the Almighty God.
All right, everybody, that's a wrap for today. We will be back, and keep an eye on our TikTok channel as well at All Things Got a Country, where we'll both be posting some stuff there
Because I can do that now.
because he can do that now. All right, everybody, have a good night.